getting youth plugged into the outdoors is one really, really great way to help support outdoor recreation. Because if our youth aren't engaged, right, they're all going to be voting age. They're all going to be part of the economy. They're all going to be making these decisions. And so I think sometimes it's really as simple as stepping up and helping to coach kids and getting them outside.
Yes, being a mentor. We've almost skipped a generation of people engaging in the outdoors. So how is this next young group coming up?
Yeah.
The Gen Alpha, how are they going to connect if they don't have mentors?
Imagine a place where stress fades, fresh air fills your lungs, and adventure awaits around every corner. Welcome to Think Outside, the podcast that inspires you to explore, connect, and embrace the outdoors.
Welcome to Think Outside with the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation. I'm your host, Marci Mowery. In today's episode, we're diving into the roadmap for recreation in the Commonwealth, the State Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan, and its partner, the PA Land and Water Trail Network Strategic Plan. These plans aren't just about trails and open space. They're about access, equity, resilience, and the quality of life we all share. Joining us is Brandon Hoover, SCORP Specialist, and Alex McDonald, Chief of the Trails, Greenways, and Statewide Planning Section, both of them within the Bureau of Recreation and Conservation at the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. They're here to walk us through what's new, what's next, and why these statewide efforts matter, not just for outdoor enthusiasts, but for every Pennsylvanian. Let's get started. Brandon and Alex, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Great. Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to be here. We're outside, so our listeners may hear the sounds of nature, but we do enjoy being in the outdoors because we're thinking outside. So having an outdoor meeting is a great way to get a little outdoor time. So I'd like to start by asking if you could give us a quick overview of the State Comprehensive Outdoor Rec Plan, and I'm going to call it SCORP, and then we'll move on to a little bit about the PA Trails Plan. So Brandon, if you can start by giving us an overview of the SCORP.
Yeah, thanks. And the SCORP is like a lot of government acronyms, is one of those that has to be unpacked. Statewide Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan, that we affectionately call SCORP, is required for Pennsylvania to be eligible for Land and Water Conservation Fund money. LWCF, Land and Water Conservation Fund, is a program that dates back to the 60s. It's administered by the National Park Service. In order for us to qualify for funding for that program, we have to have a plan that dictates, here's how this funding is going to be used to benefit communities across the Commonwealth. For Pennsylvania, since the 1960s, that has equated to approximately $200 million or more invested in communities for park and open space, for pool renovations, access to waterways. So it really is invested in our public lands and in encouraging and increasing access to our public lands. Beyond that, Pennsylvania is unique in that we use our SCORP to actually drive funding initiatives for all of our grant programs. And so it's not just the LWCF funds that SCORP dictates. It's actually our entire C2P2 grant program. Our applicants are asked to identify how their program or how their project is going to carry out a statewide initiative. And so SCORP is a really great all-encompassing plan for recreation and access to open space across the Commonwealth that drives innovation and program development and investment.
And for our listeners, C2P2 is Community Conservation Partnership Program. And we're actually meeting in a park that benefited from one of those grants. There's a greenway down along the creek that people can enjoy when they're visiting Seabird Park. Alex, can you tell us about the PA Trails Plan?
Yeah, sure. The trail plan is it's a companion to the SCORP. So we do it at the same time. And the reason we do a standalone trail plan is because trails really need that extra attention. As you'll see, if you look at the SCORP, it encompasses all recreation. And so over the last 10 years or so, we've been focusing on trails, and they need their own plan. They need their own consideration. So we do a standalone trail plan, and the trail plan a little bit different than the SCORP. The trail plan focuses maybe a little bit more on the trails community. So things that we as trail builders, maintainers, planners need to do to deliver trails. And so it's a little bit less of maybe like a public outreach kind of thing. It's really to give us direction when we're trying to build trails and plan for trails on a statewide level.
Yeah. Off the top of your head, do you have an estimate of how many miles of trails we have in the Commonwealth?
Yeah. So somewhat recently, we did an analysis and it's about 14,000 miles.
Well, that's a lot of trails.
Yeah.
So I could see why you would need a plan.
And there's more. And there's lots of efforts to build more or to connect those 14,000 miles together.
Excellent. Yes. So what are the key goals or priorities outlined in each of these plans? Brandon, we'll jump back over to you.
Yeah. So some of the new, like I said, this plan is every 5 years. And so every year there's always something a little new that kind of comes out. And I'll talk about some of the key trends, I think, a little bit later, but and some of the key findings. But three things that really jump out for this plan is one is the economic development that comes with outdoor recreation. We know that outdoor recreation across the Commonwealth, through our Office of Outdoor Recreation and the Superior Administration, really highlighting the fact that it's a $19 billion economy for the state, which puts Pennsylvania up there as a national leader in outdoor recreation economy. For SCORP, what we really tried to identify are ways that communities can connect to that outdoor recreation economy. There are a lot of towns that have maybe a state park close by or that have a trail that is adjacent to their town, but they haven't figured out how to connect that town to the outdoor rec, the people who are visiting the outdoor recreation space. And so whether that is through encouraging communities to go through a trail town planning process or a nature-based placemaking planning process or some of the other various planning processes that are working on connecting towns to that outdoor recreation asset, really connections is a major focus of the SCORP for this year, or for the next 5 years, really. The other one is health, which has been in SCORP for a number of years, and we know all the research connected to access to outdoor recreation. One of the key aspects of this, though, is the promotion of mental health and the emphasis that many Pennsylvanians are placing on mental health and their desire to be outside almost more for their mental health than their physical health. I mean, they're both still very, very important. But Pennsylvanians are identifying mental health as one of the primary drivers for visiting outdoor recreation spaces. And so we want to work really hard to connect people together in the outdoors. One of the barriers that people are identifying is that they're not having anybody to go with is identified as one of the highest barriers that prevents people from getting outside. And so whether that is older adults and older Pennsylvanians who are in the 65 plus category, which is an increasing share of Pennsylvania's population, or young adults who are looking for connections, getting outside, getting off screens, connecting with each other, we really want to try to make those strong connections. So I think connecting towns to outdoors, connecting people to each other, and connecting people to the outdoors, really major themes that have kind of popped in SCORP this year.
Okay. That makes me think I've been reading a lot about loneliness, and it's those same age populations, the younger people and the older people that are experiencing loneliness, and the outdoors is a great place to try to combat that, meeting up with people that have similar interests. So pretty excited to learn a little bit more about what's coming forth. Alex, tell us a little bit more about the trail plan.
Sure. So there's 4 major goals in the trail plan. And to paraphrase, I'm not going to read each goal off, but to paraphrase each one, basically it's connecting people and places. That's the power of trails. That's what people want. We also are looking to add capacity to the system of organizations and municipalities that are like the trail building and maintenance machine that we have in Pennsylvania. So adding more capacity. So folks there definitely need, whether that's education, whether that's training. Yeah, so giving people the skills they need to continue to build and maintain trails sustainably. Also, the plan one of the goals is to promote the benefits of trails, like Brandon started talking about, the mental and physical health, is making sure that the benefits of trails are first and out there. And then finally, we have one of the goals is trails for all people and all interests. So again, making sure that everybody feels welcome on a trail and that we are providing trails for what the people want and how they want to use them.
Yeah, because we all interact differently. I have a colleague who used to bike ride and do these different things, but now her connection is plein air art. So she's looking for trails that get her to places where she can sit and do art. So all very different ways that we interact with the outdoors.
Very cool.
Now, I know that these studies, these plans were not done in a vacuum. There were a lot of other people involved. There were studies that were engaged to really provide the data that you need to build a plan that is reflective of the needs and the desires of Pennsylvanians. So can we talk about what the public engagement process was and if there were any surprising trends that came out of that process?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm glad you asked that, because I think oftentimes when somebody thinks of a government plan, it's maybe it lives on a shelf somewhere and, a handful of people had some input to it. I think what we're really proud of is the process that both of these plans went through with public engagement and the emphasis on having a plan that reflects the values of Pennsylvanians, and also developing a plan that doesn't just drive, as I said earlier, investment and financial resources, but is also a research resource where people can reference, whether it's researchers or students in school. And so there was an extensive amount of research that went into this. And so specifically, we engaged well over 8,000 Pennsylvanians through surveys. Those ranged from the general public, which was a non-statistical sample size. That was anybody who had access to this link could come and take this survey. We had some great responses and some really unique findings from that. The other one that we did was something called the Lion Poll, which was conducted by the Center for Survey Research out of Penn State Harrisburg. That was a statistically representative sample size where we can say with a little bit more confidence, this is what Pennsylvanians think, because it had some statistical representation. And then we did some work with our providers. So our providers who are managing public lands, who are maintaining public lands, who are engaging with the public in programmatic ways in our recreation spaces, or our trail providers, we surveyed them as well to get a good snapshot of what people are thinking kind of across the board. In addition to that, we did some engagement in both Pittsburgh and Philadelphia with diverse community stakeholders. We had a representation of 40 members on our technical advisory committee from organizations from all over Pennsylvania who are front and center in doing advocacy work or providing recreation opportunities. And what was great about that is that was also a very diverse group of people, right? From both racial and ethnic diversity to also ability levels. And we had a handful of folks who are representing the disability group, right? So we felt like we had a good representation of people who were speaking into this plan. And I think as a result, as people dive into the plan and start to see some of the research as well as the action items, they'll see a good mix of representation that I think everybody in Pennsylvania could probably point to one or two action items and say, oh yeah, that's for me.
And did anything stand out for you? Any surprises?
Yeah, I referenced this earlier, but one of the things that I thought was really exciting to see was the emphasis on mental health. We oftentimes think of, I'm a cyclist, I like to use trails to run and ride. And I think I oftentimes think, I'm going outside to recreate for my physical well-being. And I have to remind myself sometimes my family kicks me out of the house to say, you're in a bad mood, go ride your bike. And the reality is I think that's the case for all of us. A lot of us come back in a better mood. And that showed up significantly in the survey results. There were about just over 65% of Pennsylvanians who said they recreate primarily for their physical health. It was overwhelming. 82% of Pennsylvanians said they recreate primarily for their mental health. So we had when asked about kind of each of those categories, it was surprising to me to see more people recreating for their mental health. I think we oftentimes think of the person out doing a trail run, the ultra marathoner, the whoever it might be, the kayaker. But the reality is we want to be able to paint in the park. We want to be able to step outside and get off of our screens, which we know, our scroll holes, which we know are causing some mental health challenges. So not surprising when you step back and see the larger literature, but I think was really exciting to see reflected in Pennsylvania.
Yes, I imagine. Scroll holes. Never heard
Scroll holes.
I heard doom scrolling, but scroll hole, I did not. And what's the process for the trail plan?
Yeah. So for the trail plan, we really used the findings from the SCORP. So all the survey information and all the data that we collected through the public outreach efforts with the SCORP plan, we used for the trail plan. Although we did also do a dedicated survey for the trail plan, and that was to what we were calling trail providers. So all the folks that are involved in planning, development, maintenance, ownership of trails, to find out what they needed, what was happening, what they were looking to do in the next 5 years, what the issues that they're dealing with. And so that was kind of the additional work that we did to inform the trail plan.
Okay. And it's interesting because I remember I was sat on the committee for the SCORP, seeing, again, that like walking was high and then hiking. So what people do in the outdoors is so directly related to the trails and the work in the trail plan. That the fact that we have that many trails is because they're important to the people in the Commonwealth.
It's a significant way that we access the outdoors.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Pennsylvania is, we don't have the high peaks of the Rockies or the Sierra Nevadas, but we do have trails. That is what makes Pennsylvania really unique.
Yeah. I would say, we have the same thing as the West. It's just like a big screen TV and a small screen TV.
Yeah.
Smaller screen TV, but we have it. But you're getting public input. People are using public lands in different ways, as we were just discussing. So how do you balance those diverse needs of user groups?
That's a great question and really tricky one. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, right? And I'll just 2 or 3 that kind of pop to mind and we've discussed as part of this planning process and thinking about ways to develop our trails and our parks to ensure that different user groups are, and new user groups too, right? There's always new user groups that are popping up too, as technology and different equipment becomes more accessible. I think one of the big things, and this is what's so important about doing a plan like this, is planning for user groups, right? So making sure that we're actually planning with all of these different user groups in mind, which is why a question like, and getting an idea of what are some of the most popular uses and how many people are doing them and where are they doing them is really important to ensure that our public lands in each area of the state are catering to different user groups. And then the other one is designing our spaces so that user groups are comfortable. I think that is an equity issue, as well as ensuring that different activity user groups, like a hiker and a biker, aren't going to cause conflict on a trail, or an equestrian and a cyclist, right? These are some of the classic trail examples. But even beyond some of the classic trail examples of user conflict, I think sometimes we oftentimes need to think about parks and how different cultures are going to use them as well. So ensuring that there are cookout spaces for communities that might have a higher concentration of Black or Latino communities that have emphasized barbecuing and cookouts as a higher priority compared to white communities. Thinking about park design so that maybe a community that has a large Middle Eastern or Indian population is able to play cricket in addition to having the softball field, right? So I think like designing parks with multi-use in mind is really, really valuable. And I think more and more park managers are seeing that and responding to that. And we have the technology oftentimes too, where we can actually have a field that isn't just a dedicated field for one sport or one activity. We have the technology to have a field that is a little bit more multi-use with turf fields and other types of technology like that.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's very helpful just for people to feel heard, that they've had an ability to share their priorities or their concerns. And I think about when we're talking here, we're not just talking about state parks and state forests, we're talking about community recreation. And where we sit today, you can access a creek to get on a water trail. You've got a walker, biker trailway. You've got a swimming pool. You've got a youth camp, or sitting in a quiet area. There's a playground. So there's lots of different activities, and you don't necessarily know the other exists because of the design of the space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I can add what you talked about, local parks there, not just state parks. And that's the majority of Pennsylvanians, as they responded to the surveys and doing this research, identified local parks as the place they recreate most often. And we oftentimes think about these large trail networks or these big state parks or national parks, and those certainly fill the spotlight, but our local parks are where people want those things, right? They want to be able to have a trail in their local park where they can walk their dog or go for a short hike or a mountain bike ride after work. They want to be able to tube real quick for maybe an hour with their kids after a long work day. And so those local parks really are so important for having those multiple aspects of recreation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We may be the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation with state parks and state forests, but we are also fans of local parks, and we're in one today. How about you, Alex? Do you have anything you want to add in terms of balancing use?
Yeah, there's really, Brandon alluded to this, there's really not one answer on how you do that. And I think to just give it just a really simple answer, though, is to try to engage for trails, is to try to engage with all user types. I mean, we know who's out there, and a lot of them have state associations or local or regional clubs. And so really just trying to make sure that the opportunity is given for those groups to speak up and speak to what they want to see.
That's so important. And I want to build on something that Brandon had said. It was in terms of people want those things in the communities. And is that part of what the Trail Gaps is trying to do, get the trails into communities?
Yeah, because the power of trails, or the great thing about trails is when they connect to places. It's not fun when you take a trail and then it just sort of ends, but you know that there's more trail like a couple miles away, or like Brandon said in the beginning, like it stops outside of town but doesn't really get you into town. Yeah, so using trails for transportation, but also to get you to the places where you want to be.
Yeah, it could be your commute to work, but it also could be your commute to ice cream.
Yes.
Yes. Ice cream.
Ice cream. Absolutely.
So one of the goals of SCORP is increasing equitable access to the outdoors. So what steps are being taken to achieve that goal?
Yeah, I talked about it a minute ago, talking about culturally diverse places, talking about the emphasis on, designing space and parks so that you have different user groups or different cultural experiences in a local park, in a state park. But some of the actions that we're working on, and I'll highlight some of our partners here. The Pittsburgh Park Conservancy, just this past summer, actually did a stakeholder engagement process and created a sensory trail, which was a trail that is for folks who are visually impaired or who may be neurologically diverse, neurodiverse communities, so that there is a trail experience where they're out in nature. But sometimes we don't love just sitting there hiking for 2-3 miles with our own thoughts, or we're visually impaired and can't do that on our own. And so having some texture, having different aspects of play embedded in a trail network is one of those examples of increasing equitable access to the outdoors, especially for communities that might be neurodiverse. One of the things that we just released last fall as an agency in partnership, I believe, with PPFF, is our colorblind viewfinders. And so that was a great example of increasing equity in our outdoors. Pennsylvania, this was a surprise to me, but not to some of my colleagues. Scenic driving was a really popular activity. And a lot of that has to do around the fact that we have these beautiful forests that are changing colors in the fall. And so for somebody who's colorblind, which is a significant portion of the population actually in Pennsylvania, for them to be able to experience that through these colorblind viewfinders is a really great example of increasing equity. So there's all sorts of things, easy dock kayak launches, right? These are universal access strategies that aren't just for the people who need them. They're for everybody, right? Anybody getting in and out of a kayak, there's nothing graceful about it. And so
We'll swim at least once.
All tip. I was a river guide for years, and we always said the most dangerous part of the trip is always the shoreline,
yes.
Right? It's getting in and out of the boat. And so, having easy dock kayak launches is great for somebody who might be in a wheelchair and can't navigate that shoreline. They can get from their wheelchair or their mobility device into the boat and launch into the lake or into a stream. But it's also great for all of us. And so I think those increasing those equitable strategies is really, really one of the major aspects of SCORP, and we want to continue that. We've done some great work. I think it's trying to take that work from a state level and start to see some of that stuff embedded in our local park spaces.
Building upon it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is literally a build it and they will come kind of situation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How about for trails?
Yeah. When we surveyed the trail providers, I think something that we heard, and maybe it was a little bit surprising to me, but one of the top ways that they see their ability to engage broader community is through good signage and wayfinding. So again, making sure that people know where the trail is, know where it goes, and that people are more confident on getting on a trail, especially for folks who maybe don't have a lot of experience getting on trails. They can have that comfort of, oh, I'm not going to wind up in the middle of the woods and not have any idea where I am.
Right.
So that was a finding that surprised me a little bit, but it absolutely makes sense.
Well, I think so often people go where they know. So if they don't know where another trailhead is, or they don't know about another trail, they're going to go to what they normally do. And it opens up opportunities for them. And I think we saw that during the pandemic, that trailheads were being overrun. But when we started pointing out alternatives, they're like, oh, the world is my oyster. I have all these opportunities.
And there tend to be, sometimes there are trails in communities that people don't realize they're even there because they're not signed. There's no wayfinding to or from those places. And so they might know it exists somewhere, but they're not even sure where.
And they could be thematic, like there's historical trails that take you on a historic walk. Lots of opportunity. I want to stick with you there for a little bit, Alex. What's the vision for long distance or regional trail systems in Pennsylvania?
Yes. So for a number of years, the Commonwealth, I don't know how much history we want to go, how far we want to go back, but under Governor Ridge, so that long ago, we started identifying greenways and what we were calling major greenways. So these are trails that are 50 miles or more in length. But again, conceptual. Most of them weren't built yet. So there were these ideas that organizations were pursuing. And so we've kind of grown this network around the state. Most are still in some stage of development. Some are getting along pretty well and will probably be done in the next decade or so. They could be 140, 120 miles. So, I'm excited to see those efforts sort of get completed.
Yes.
So one effort is to focus on completing those major greenways, which again, 50 miles or more, go through multiple counties. We also, in this plan, it recognizes the great work and really effective strategy of planning and building trails on a regional level, like coordination on a regional level. And there's the circuit trails in Philadelphia region. There's the link system in the Lehigh Valley. There's the Industrial Heartlands Coalition out in Western PA. And they are...
Our friend the wind.
Yes.
Visited.
Yeah, so the Industrial Heartlands Coalition. And so in Northeast PA, there's the NEPA Trail Forum. There are these sort of organic efforts of folks locally getting together and saying, there's benefit to us looking at this from a regional level, planning on a regional level, making sure we understand what each other is doing. And then it also, I think to me, it seems like it has also been an effective way of fundraising.
I could see that. And I could see it would also potentially reduce overlap so that you're not doing the same thing.
Absolutely.
So I like that concept. Those are great examples as well.
And we'd like to see that expand.
Yes. We just experienced in the past week some regional storms that have, I'm looking online. We've got some of our parks that are closed. The trails at Brickett's Glen are closed at the moment, not when this is airing. And these storms seem to be pretty regular now. So how do these plans look at climate resilience and planning for these episodic but impactful storms that we've been having?
Yeah, that's a really great question. One of the things we're really proud of and value a lot is the fact that for the first time in SCORP, we have climate as a devoted category, a devoted priority area, climate and sustainability. And so we recognize that climate change is happening. that it's impacting Pennsylvanians. And what's really interesting on top of that is that our recreation enthusiasts, right? So this is that public survey data component. Our recreation enthusiasts are also saying climate change is a real concern for them as they navigate their recreation spaces. So 61% of recreation enthusiasts said climate change is a real concern. They're worried about it and how it's going to impact not just their future recreation experiences, but recreation now, right? Which you alluded to with trail closures and high water levels, unsafe water levels that come from that, all of those things. So one of the things that we have outlined and emphasized in SCORP is working with local park and rec providers to ensure that we have adaptation strategies for how climate change is going to impact their open space. The DEP years ago created something called the Local Climate Action Program, which was designed for townships, municipalities, boroughs to do greenhouse gas inventories and to create climate action plans. As somebody who has participated in that, actually right here in Camp Hill, helped write their climate action plan in a previous life. And one of the things that was missing from that is park and open space providers. We want to get park and open space providers plugged into local climate action planning, recognizing that our open space serves a really great opportunity for adapting to climate change. People are going to be seeking cooling opportunities in our natural bodies of water, in our pools, in our splash pads. And so we're going to see an increase in that. They're also going to oftentimes our trails or our park spaces are built in low-lying areas or areas that are prone to flooding. And so from a maintenance standpoint, which is a whole other animal that if we have time to get into, we will, we want to make sure that our recreation spaces, we can adapt to those, right? So thinking about our culverts differently, ensuring that our road crossings or our trail crossings over streams are able to handle high floodwaters, that 500-year flood that isn't 500 years anymore. So making sure our infrastructure is in place to manage some of that. The last thing I'll say is that I think our park spaces are also incredibly inspiring places. People come to our parks, state parks, local parks, national parks, whatever it is, to be inspired. And parks have a great opportunity to inspire homeowners, individuals to adopt new lifestyles that might also encourage climate mitigation, right? So thinking about our park pavilions as solar opportunities, doing demonstrations of native planting meadows, to think about our landscaping differently than just lawns, right? All things that are really necessary for, habitat protection, but also are really great at adapting to climate change. Native plants are always better than non-native plants at adapting to climate change. So seeing our parks as inspirational spaces, as really in some way like climate labs for local communities, and wanting to really emphasize and work with local park providers to do that.
Yeah, do things that are replicable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Homeowner level. And trails are seeing impacts from climates.
Absolutely.
And how does the trail plan address climate resiliency?
So I will add to what we heard from the trail providers far and above when we asked them, what's your biggest maintenance issue? And it was severe storms. That was just far above everything else. Nothing else even came close. So it's a real thing. So in the plan, we're looking to, we hear maintenance is the thing that everybody needs. And we've heard this for a while now. And it's a tough issue to tackle from a statewide perspective. We know we need it. So in the plan, there are different action steps to have to take more of a focus on maintenance and resources for maintenance. But at the same time, we have this legacy trail system that wasn't built for what we're experiencing now. So we recognize okay, sustainable design just has to be trail design. There can't be a separate sustainable design and then regular trail design and construction. So recognizing that and sustainability just kind of being what we do from now on. So we probably have to revisit some of our trails and try to make them more resilient, ensure that we're building new trails that can withstand these kinds of storms, and then ensure that there's maintenance on our trails.
Yeah. And I'll say it out loud. There are some of our trails that they're on the fall line. They were built by the Civilian Conservation Corps. They were built with other standards, and some of them may need to be retired or rerouted in order for a trail to be sustainable.
Yeah.
So don't want it to come as a surprise to you listeners that there may be some shifting. It's for the long run and for the good of the long haul. Well, we're starting to come towards the end, but there are still a few questions. This plan has a lot of different aspects. How can somebody who's listening, if they want to advance either of these plans, how can they be of service, or what's one small action that they can take?
Yes, thank you. I would definitely say look locally, get engaged locally. We know that, actually, back to the maintenance question, just kind of an example, when we asked organizations how they're able to maintain their trails, like where the funding comes from, municipal and county is number one, and number two is donations. So it's not state or federal, which might be a surprise to some people, that the state isn't the one maintaining a lot of trails, except for trails on their own lands, which they still use volunteers to help with. So getting engaged locally is absolutely a great way to help implement the vision in either plan.
And to build on that, then we'll jump to you, Brandon. And we didn't talk about the question of funding challenges. Is that the only funding challenge that came out of the trail plan?
Maintenance was really kind of the big one. I think the other thing that we heard was when we asked about closing trail gaps, like what's really the challenge there, and getting access through property was really a big challenge in closing trail gaps. But maintenance, yes, is definitely taking center stage.
Yeah, that's a big topic throughout this whole process, has been maintenance from a funding standpoint. Yeah, I'll say the local engagement, get involved in your local environmental advisory council, get involved in your shade tree commission if your town has one, get involved in your local trail networks, plug into non-traditional youth sports, I think is another really good one. Volunteer in non-traditional youth sports. There's a lot of soccer coaches, there's a lot of basketball coaches, and some towns are still short on those. So like getting youth plugged into the outdoors is one really, really great way to help support outdoor recreation, because if our youth aren't engaged, right, they're all going to be voting age, they're all going to be part of the economy, they're all going to be making these decisions. And so I think sometimes it's really as simple as stepping up and helping to coach kids and getting them outside, whether that's soccer or even some of our more non-traditional sports like climbing or paddling clubs or cycling clubs. Those types of things are really, really helpful and beneficial.
Yes. Being a mentor, I think is area you were picked to. We've almost skipped a generation of people engaging in the outdoors. So how is this next young group coming out? Yeah. The Gen Alpha, how are they going to connect if they don't have mentors? Before we wrap up, I want to make sure that give you an opportunity to share any last thoughts that we may have missed or may have come up as we've moved through the conversation about the statewide, which I'm sorry, I forgot the wide, I should know better, statewide comprehensive and outdoor rec plan and the trail plan.
One of the things I'll end with is the title of our plan, Outdoor Places, Shared Spaces. It is a reflection of the importance of place and space in our lives. There's a joke that a family member of mine says is, no matter where you go, there you are. And right, you can't escape yourself. That's kind of the joke. But I actually like to think of it and flip it on its head and say, no matter where you go, there you are, meaning you are always in some space. You're always occupying a place, and that place and that space has meaning for the people around you. It has meaning for you. And if we don't work to redeem those places, to reconcile ourselves to those places, to recognize that these are shared spaces, not just with each other, but with the biotic community as well, then we're always going to be native to nowhere, to borrow a term from a human geographer, right? We're always going to expect the TJ Maxx shopping center with the Best Buy, right? Everyone's been to all of these shopping centers. We're native to nowhere in that space. The idea here is we want to be native to somewhere. And I think park space and outdoor space grounds us and makes us native to the places that we call home, and recognize that we occupy place and space, and we are part of that redemption story and part of that reconciliation story of people to that place.
Oh, I like that thought. Yeah. I'm going to have to sit with that for a while. Alex.
Sure. I think the only thing I'll add, we talked about getting involved locally, but again, back to that subject, is making sure that your townships, boroughs, cities, counties where you live is making sure that they know that you support trails if that's what you want in your community. And just so when these projects come up, when things come up, is that they understand like, oh, well, we've heard from our constituents and we know that this is something that they want. Because if everybody's silent, then it's really just kind of a question mark.
Sometimes we grouse among ourselves, but we need to bring ourselves to take our thoughts in a constructive way. Sure. Decision makers.
Absolutely.
Alex, Brandon, thank you for joining us and helping us, leading us into a deep dive into Pennsylvania's outdoor future. Whether you're a weekend hiker, a trails advocate, or someone who simply loves to breathe fresh air close to home, these plans are building a better connected, more inclusive, and more sustainable outdoor experience for all. We like to say at PPFF, like cradle to grave, that, our lands are here for you, and that this plan is actually ensuring that throughout the lifespan, you have access to healthy outdoor recreation. The link to the plans, as well as I think the climate resiliency I'll put in from the DEP, it will be in the show notes. So until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and we'll see you out there. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Think Outside, where every episode invites you to discover new places, build confidence, and find inspiration in nature. Love the show? Subscribe for more inspiration, share with a fellow explorer, and let's keep thinking outside together. For more resources and inspiration, visit thinkoutside.podcast.org.